Finance Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Manpower by Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong on Wednesday. Speaking to the media at the launch of Jurong Lake Run 2011, he spoke on how he will manage and formulate policy in Singapore.
I think we've got to listen before we formulate. I think with each new term of government, and particularly with this new term of government, after a watershed elections, we've got to do a lot of consultation, feedback, toing and froing as well. Not just listen and then think about it and decide what we want to do, but listen and then get back to people and refine ideas in that process.
Mr. Shanmugaratnam will also take over Senior Minister Goh Chok Tong as the Chairman of MAS, on top of his roles as DPM, Minister for Finance and Minister for Manpower.
Well, I think in MOM it's transitional. We have a new man coming in, Tan Chuan Jin, who has a lot of promise. I'll be holding the fort and helping to guide him and overseeing policy work especially. But I expect that he'll come up to scratch quickly. It's not like you're having three different hats on your head. It's more one hat on top of another, so when you put it together, it's not that large actually. Well, there's a lot of coordination in any event between MOF and MOM at the policy level. Everything we do in CPF and workfare, foreign workers, we're already coordinating very tightly. That's why I say it's one hat on top of another and not two different hats.
Mr. Shanmugaratnam launched the inaugural Jurong Lake Run 2011, which aims to attract 8,000 participants on Friday, and pointed to the event as an example of Singaporeans coming together to create something from the ground up.
This whole event was the initiative of a group of young Singaporeans. The idea came from a small group of youth who were themselves running enthusiasts. They pushed the idea, got support from myself and other community leaders, got support of the corporate sector, and have been working extremely hard to bring this to fruition. And it's a good example of what Singaporeans can do, whether in sports and culture or in developing strong social support networks on the ground.
The Jurong Lake Run will be held on the 10th of July with a 10-kilometre competitive race and a 5-kilometre fun run for individuals and families. So will Mr. Shanmugaratnam, MP for the Taman Jurong Ward in Jurong GRC, be taking part in the race?
I will probably be forced to, but, without three hats on the head. Yeah.
In the next clip, Mr. Shanmugaratnam speaks more on the new cabinet and government policies.
Find out a little bit more about your appointment and coordinating Minister for policy.
Yes.
Shed some light on what portfolio is all about and what you doing in this role.
Yes. Well, first, I think we've got to listen before we formulate. I think with each new term of government, and particularly with this new term of government, after a watershed elections, we've got to do a lot of consultation, feedback, toing and froing as well. Not just listen and then think about it and decide what we want to do, but listen and then get back to people and refine ideas in that process. Expectations are high, and we've got to try to make sure that coming out of this whole process, we don't fall into one of two situations. One is to just end up falling flat without being able to deliver much change. On the other hand, trying to deliver change just for the sake of being popular and trying to please as many people as possible. Let's do the right thing for as many Singaporeans as possible for the long term. And that means looking at trade-offs, whether it has to do with foreign workers, whether it has to do with housing supply, whether it has to do with subsidies for a very broad group of people for which someone has to pay. My instincts are to try to do things better, do things in a more caring way, rather than to raise taxes in order to spend a lot more. We've got a robust budget, a strong revenue base. Let's use it as well as possible, both to meet social needs, but also to make sure that the economic engine is healthy, because that's what generates jobs, higher incomes, and gives people a sense of satisfaction because their standard of living goes up over time. So there are trade-offs involved in every social and economic policy. And we've got to focus on those trade-offs honestly, tell people the truth, and not pretend as if there are no problems. Tell people the truth about every policy choice. That's the way in which we sustain our credibility over the long term, and it's the long-term interests of Singaporeans that still have to be foremost in our mind. We can deal with short-term problems. We have the resources to deal with short-term problems, but it's thinking through the long-term policy choices that requires careful thought, extensive consultation, and this toing and froing in the discussion.
So with the appointment as coordinating minister for economy and...
Yeah, that's not a formal term, coordinating minister, but I will be coordinating social and economic policies. It's not a...
So it's another clear sign that the government, of the government's commitment to inclusive growth.
I think it's a new phase in the way we're going about that commitment. The commitment is not new, but the way we're going about it is going to be a lot more. It's going to involve a lot more people, a lot more feedback from the ground, as well as discussion with people on the ground, social workers, teachers and principals, everyone who has a care for Singaporeans. I found in my own past portfolios, there's just so much good thinking and good hearts on the ground. And it's worth listening to them, engaging with them, and then trying to translate their ideas into something that's for the betterment of Singaporeans over the long term.
So you mentioned for the flat just now, a possibility of that if things are not done, properly. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm just giving you a sense of initial instincts. I don't like talking too much before I've started on a job, to be honest. I prefer to listen first, think about the issues with a group of colleagues before we decide on how to go. But we are ambitious. We don't intend for this to be a matter of form, but substance. There has to be substance.
Analysts have said that they are confident that you'll deliver on government promises to raise incomes and, as well as cap the inflow of foreign workers. Are there any? What are your plans regarding these two issues?
Well, you see, across the whole set of issues, our social safety net, what we do in health, both for the low-income group, where we've got Medifund, as well as the lower middle and middle-income group, in housing, where there's a whole span of issues, in manpower policy, foreign workers, workfare, a whole set of issues, each of which involves trade-off. And we've got to be very honest about it. Every policy involves a trade-off. Even workfare involves trade-offs. If you boost it too much, you've got to make sure that you don't reduce the incentive for people to move up, train, and increase their incomes. These are trade-offs which every developed country has faced. Some have resolved the trade-off by deciding, well, let's just go for the maximum benefit in the short term, but you end up in a dire state in the long term and your people are worse off. So we want to avoid that.
Sir, we are very more than 1 year now. What benefits do you think that jobs and create in charge of under 1%?
Yeah. Well, I think in MOM it's transitional. We have a new man coming in, Tan Chuan Jin, who has a lot of promise. I'll be holding the fort and helping to guide him and overseeing policy work especially. But I expect that he'll come up to scratch quickly. It's not like you're having 3 different hats on your head. It's more one hat on top of another, so when you put it together, it's not that large actually.
What's the benefit
Well, there's a lot of coordination in any event between MOF and MOM at the policy level. Everything we do in CPF, in workfare, foreign workers, we're already coordinating very tightly. That's why I say it's one hat on top of another and not two different hats. Sorry? Well, that's what I was talking about earlier. I didn't want to say too much. Let's review it. Come in with an open mind and review everything without fear.
Do you think it'll be a challenge for you, having so many hats? How are you going to?
No, I have a way of wearing hats without them falling off.
Do you see yourself an agent of change within the government as well?
I rather not use phrases and epithets about myself, sorry.
Others expect you to focus on training workers, particularly the older and lower skilled workers,
Yeah.
and look at them as a possible source of manpower, bigger source, maybe a larger source. Do you think that there's any truth in that?
Well, I think that has to be a key plank. Frankly, for any advanced country, it has to be a key plank. There's a tremendous challenge we're going to face. I spoke about it briefly at the lunchtime rally during the elections, but it's a very real challenge the next 10 years because China is moving upstream. It's no longer about low-wage manufacturing. It's about white-collar jobs. It's about skilled blue-collar jobs. Everyone has to improve. Everyone has to keep improving, and we can. We've got the resources. That's the advantage we have in Singapore. We have the resources and the institutional capabilities to support everyone in every job to improve, get better, earn more. Many other countries are short of the resources and they're having to cut back. Even in basic education, they're having to cut back. So it's an advantage we have, and I think we can be optimistic about our future for that reason.
Sorry, you're in charge of economic and social policy.
Yes.
This could actually facilitate the achievement of the targeted 30% increase in median income within the next decade.
Well, we're working as a team on that. We are committed to it. It's ambitious but not far-fetched. Ambitious but not far-fetched.
What are the challenges
Yeah.
do you think they will face?
First, economic restructuring. That's not a new agenda. With the Economic Strategies Committee, we gave it fresh impetus, and there's a lot of work ahead in every industry, helping firms to consolidate or upgrade in order to stay viable and competitive, helping workers up and down the line improve their skills and gain greater satisfaction on the job as well in the process, because it's not just about incomes but also satisfaction and fulfillment. But we think we can achieve this. So I'm sorry, I don't want to give a long interview today. Haven't even been sworn in, by the way. Yeah, sorry.
MTI's figures, the economic growth.
Yes, yeah. For now, I think things are under control. Across Asia, across emerging Asia, there is that risk of overheating. But the authorities are tightening policies, shifting gears, both on monetary policy as well as fiscal policy. And I think for now it is under control, but we've got to watch that very carefully. Please focus also on this event. It's actually, small events matter. So I believe very strongly that small initiatives and small events matter because they're started by small groups of people. And that is part of Singapore that's frankly very encouraging. How small groups of individuals, in this case very young individuals, can develop an idea, get support from government, from community leaders, and from the corporate sector, and make something happen. And what we do in sports, we can do in culture, and we can do in local social support networks.
Are you running?
I will probably be forced to, but, without three hats on the head. Yeah.
So you've been impressed with what this group of young people?
Oh yes, yeah, wonderful. Entirely driven by themselves. Really impressive. No. Another example of what we should do, and it should be done in many spheres, including the social sphere.